Hey guys, welcome to the Skolo Online YouTube channel, the channel that is all about learning, okay? In this channel, we make a lot of videos on web development, WordPress design, e-commerce development, Python development, and a whole lot more. We will take you through the process of everything we're teaching you from beginning to end, step by step, so that you can follow along and build as we build, all right? If you're new to this channel, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button. The subscribe button is going to be red right underneath the video that you're watching, and like this video and comment on these videos. Let us know what works for you, what doesn't work for you, so that we can create content that is more relevant to what you guys want to watch, okay? Also, underneath the video that you're watching, there is that show more button underneath the description. Please open it up and have a look at some of the links that we've created for you. Every time that we make a video, we will add all the useful links underneath it. So if you hear me saying in the video that I'm going to link it in the description below, that's where you'll find the link in the description underneath the video, all right, for more information to help you learn along, all right? And a lot of the videos that we make, also we will create timestamps because our videos are long. You don't have to watch the entire video. You can go through these timestamps and read which part of the video you are interested in watching. Click on the timestamp and it will fast forward you to that part of the video, and you only have to watch that, all right? And we also have linked in the description below our social media channels, so feel free to follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. We've got our website right there, and if you want to get in touch with us, my email address is also available in the description below. So let's start learning. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to continue where we left off with our customer relationship management tutorial that we are building on Airtable with the front end in Python Flask. Okay, we are using Airtable as our back-end database that's going to be managing and keeping and storing the data that we will be having inside of our CRM. So all our database tables are going to be built inside of Airtable, but we want the front end to be done inside of Flask so that users can interact with the database in Airtable, but with the front end that's sitting in Flask. We're going to be building our organizational logic and our rules and requirements and sort of our governance logic inside of the server of the Flask application. So with respect to who has access to what, who can view what, and as leads get translated into something else, as you create new leads, all that organizational logic we are going to build inside of the Flask application, but we will keep the database inside of Airtable. And instead of me talking too much, let me just show you exactly what we're going to be doing today. Today we will take it to the next level by actually creating the front end dashboard. Now for that, you will need to have an HTML file or an HTML template that you're going to be working with for your front end. And there's many options that you can consider at this point. If you have a little bit of a budget, you can go to online template suppliers and you can buy yourself an amazing or a nice HTML dashboard. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I have looked for and searched for Bootstrap dashboard templates that are available for free online so that everybody can follow along with this tutorial, even if you don't have a budget to purchase your own dashboard template. So if you were, if you're following along, just go over here there and Google for Bootstrap dashboard template. And the one that we're going to be working with is from startbootstrap.com. I've opened startbootstrap.com and they've got a lot of admin templates that you can work with. There's a couple of them that are not for free, and there's a couple that are for free. So if you check over here, the very first one there that says SB Admin 2, this is a free Bootstrap admin theme template that you can work with. They already have about 2 million downloads. So you can head over there. This is really simple. They don't even ask for a login or any information whatsoever. You can basically just click on it. And if you click on it, it will open on a new window like that one. You can view the source code on GitHub. You can live preview what this looks like, and you can immediately download it very, very easily. So that's what I recommend you do right there. All right, so download this template so that we can work with this. However, if you want to follow along, you will need to translate this template into a Flask a workable template, which means you need to sort of rewrite all of the, all the sort of the CSS and all the static files. You have to write them the way a Flask template works. So what I've done to help you along, I've done that for you, and I've created a GitHub repository under Skolo Online. So you can head over there, and I will put the link to this in the description of the video below. But what I've done for you here is that I've just made it simpler for you to be able to work with this template. I've taken all the files and put them inside of a template folder the way Flask works. And then I've created a static folder where I've added all the static files which we'll be using in this project. So that is your CSS, your HTML, your CSS, your SCSS, your JavaScript files, your vendor files. I've added them all in that static directory. And then I've created just an initial index.html file. So if you look at the index file, I've added an index.html file, which is basically a blank file which doesn't have anything on it. It's just basically saying that the dashboard will come here. So it just has like an H1 that says the dashboard will come here, and then it extends the layout, and I've put everything inside of the layout so that it will be easier to work with. Okay, so if you want to follow along, this is probably a good place for you to start. You can head over to this Git repo, which I will link in the description below, and then you can copy this repo, and then you'll be able to follow along. So if you get to the repo, you can copy that that link to the Git repo over there, and I'm going to be working off a virtual environment as usual, because for me it's just easier to program off a virtual private server, so I don't write all this code and have to install so many things on my personal computer, and I can delete it when I'm done. So this is basically a blank directory, and once you've copied that that link to the repo over there, you can just git clone that repo like that. Okay, so you can git clone and they put the link to that repo like that, and then it's going to clone into that repository, and it's going to copy everything that's available over there in here. And then if you list now, you will see you now have a folder in there that's called CRM course, and I'm going to cd in there. And if you cd into that CRM course, you will have all those files that I have created inside of the Git repo that I've made for you. All right, so I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to ls-l here and just show you what's available in there. It's that app file, the config, and the static folder. Right, I have the files already opened in here because I was working on them earlier on. I'll just show you what's available over there. I've just done a basic skeletal Flask application for you. All right, if you're not familiar with Flask, I recommend that you watch our video that we have in this channel. One of the older videos from a couple of months ago, we created a Flask tutorial where we show you how to work through Flask, how to do the folder structures. So I'm not going to go into the basics of Flasks right now. I'm going to assume that you have some sort of basic Python understanding of how to write Python code, but also some basic understanding of how to work with the Flask application. Flask web framework is one of the easiest Python or web frameworks to work with. It's really lightweight. It's simple to understand. You don't have to write a lot of lines of code to get it to work. You basically just need a file that's called app.py and maybe some templates inside of your HTMLs and a static folder, and you're good to go. All right. So our folder structure is basically looking like this. We've got an app.py file, and inside of that app.py file, it's sitting in the base of our directory, and inside of there we basically just from Flask we import Flask, and then we initiate the Flask framework, and then after that we register 404, and then we simply render the view the HTML file for the root, for the home root, and then we initialize the application on port 888. So basically this is what we're doing here in this app.py file, which means you should have a template called index.html, and this template should sit inside of your templates a folder. All right, so if you copied our repository the way I showed you, you will have all of that ready for you. But before you can run this, you will need to install Flask. So the requirements for running this initially is just pip install Flask. but I recommend that you use a virtual environment. So let's perhaps start by installing a virtual environment. We're going to use virtual env, and then we're going to call our virtual environment app env. All right. This is assuming you have virtual env installed right now inside of your machine. Okay. If you don't have it, you can easily get that installed. So let's see. All right. So everything went well without an issue. If you ls, you should now see that app env has been created over there. All right. If you don't have virtual env installed in your computer, you can do that easily, quickly. You can just Google search install virtual env Ubuntu, whatever machine you're working with. Just Google for how to do that on that machine. And you'll find a lot of tutorials that will assist you in doing this. One of the skills of a good programmer is the ability to search for information when you need it. So I won't always show you everything in this channel. Sometimes I will let you figure things out on your own, and that's part of the learning process. Now, once we have initiated our virtual environment, or we have at least installed it, we are going to activate it. And to activate it, you need to just go source, the name of your virtual environment. In our case, it's app env, and we're going to do bin activate like that. And then you will see your env activated like that on the end. And then we're going to clear that. Therefore, once you have the virtual environment activated like that, this means you can now install your Python packages or your pip packages inside of the virtual environment. Why do we use virtual environments? It's a nice, clean way of being able to segregate or keep your Python packages in one place for your project, so that they don't mix up with the rest of the environments inside of your whole machine. Because in a lot of cases, you find that you are developing more than one project inside of one computer. So every time you install a package, like let's say you install Flask, if you install it, just pip install Flask in the whole machine, it will install it in your whole computer or whatever machine it is you're working with. And then if you have different projects, like perhaps you want to use different versions of Flask, you won't be able to do that because you'll have one Flask version installed in your whole machine. So it's been good practice, and a lot of Python developers have been doing it for years, and it's the best way to do it is that every time you create a new project, within that project you create a folder, and in that folder you're going to put all your packages in that folder, and therefore when you run that project, you're going to run it from that folder. Therefore you can manage your packages just for that project, and when you delete that project, you can actually even delete it with that folder that has its packages inside, and you can segregate, and you can put like a wall between your different projects. And if you wanted to run different versions of Flask for different projects depending on your project requirements, you could do that if you are running your packages inside of one virtual environment. So a virtual environment is basically just a folder that is going to be handling all your packages for that project. All right, and then we will be putting all our packages in that folder, and that folder sits inside of the project directory. Now, our folder in our case is this app env, and we've activated it like that, which means now we are running with the packages inside of that folder. We can now install our Flask. So I'm going to do just pip install Flask like that, and it will go ahead, it will fetch Flask, and it will install it. And in this specific case, it will install it just in the virtual environment that we are working in. And then we're going to test that if this is working properly. We are going to do Python app.py, which means we are running our application inside of our virtual environment, and we'll click enter. And provided we don't have any errors, this should run properly. And then you can now go into this machine over there, and you can look for this on port 888. This is where it's running it from, because we specified port 888 inside of our app.py file. We can actually just go and search for it. All right, and we can run it, and then we can see what our project directory looks like. Okay, so if you've copied that Git repo that I'm going to link in the description below, and you have done everything like I showed you, you should have a dashboard that looks like this. So this is going to be a starting point for our project. We're going to build our CRM over here. We're going to list and do all our nice plots and everything over there. You'll see I already have 3 menu items because I'm not going to make an extensive CRM. I'm just going to show you the basics that you should be able to take on from here and build onto it, perhaps to create a more specific or customized CRM for your organization. But from the basics that I'm going to teach you, you should be able to build onto that. So I'm going to sort of focus on 3 main entities over here. I'm going to create a users table, which we've already done on our CRM over there, which is this users table over there. So I'm going to sort of use the Airtable API and display the same table over there, and then I'm going to create a table for projects, and then I'm going to have one for sales or clients, or whatever, leads perhaps. I know I call this clients, perhaps I'll rename it to leads. So I'm going to have 3 main entities or 3 main departments, which will be the users, or the users of the within the organization, and then we'll have the projects that we're going to be working on, and these projects obviously will be coming out from the sales, which will be the the leads, and the clients. They'll be over there. So let's start with the users. Now, if you go back to the users table over here, right, I want to take this data that is shown inside of this CRM table, and I want to display it on my application over here. And I also want the ability to manipulate this data here. And as I change it on my application over there, I want that to change also on my Airtable table base, all right? So we're going to be performing what we call CRUD operation from our Flask application to talking to our Airtable database. So this is going to get interesting. And by CRUD, I mean we want to be able to have the ability to create, to read, to update, and to delete data from our Flask application directly into our Airtable database. And in order to do that, we need to obviously connect to the Airtable database using the Airtable API. All right, we've done an Airtable API tutorial before, but this one is going to take us right into the details of of the API. So for us to do that, go and search for Airtable API, right? Search for Airtable API, and it'll be the first one that comes up, and just click on it. And if you're logged into your Airtable account, this only works really well if you're logged into your Airtable account. You'll be able to see all your available Airtable tables, all right? So I've got a lot of Airtable tables over here. Well, not a lot, a couple. And the one that I'm interested in working on with this API is the CRM. So when you accessing the Airtable API, it works slightly different from some of the APIs that I've worked with, in the sense that the API is sort of built to to be specific to your specific data set, so that it helps you really, it helps you how to, it gives you even the code that you need to be able to integrate into your table. So you have to specify to the API what table that you want to be connecting with on the API, and then it will assist you by providing you custom code for tying into that Airtable API. So I'm going to click my CRM table, and you'll see as soon as you click your CRM table, it's very, very specific. It can already read off your CRM table off your CRM base, or your CRM Airtable base. It will read all the tables that you have available, right? It's got authentication, all right? All right, and it's got the team table. So if I have a look over there in my table, you see I've got team, I've got lead, and I've got lead meeting. These are all the different tables that I've got in my API, and in my Airtable base. So if I look at my Airtable API, I can access the same tables over there. So I've got the team table, I've got the lead table, and I've got the lead meeting table, all right? And if you go into the team table, for example, and there are different options that you have with the API. You can list records, retrieve, create, update, or delete. So you've got your CRUD operations, your create, read, update, and delete. All right. So I'm going to start with a listing, and listing is sort of like reading the records, because I want to be able to list all the available records that I have on this table. All right. So I'm going to click on the list records so that I can get the API. Okay, so if you click on that list records for the team table, over there to the right of the screen, you'll be able to see sort of the example code that you need to be using when you're accessing the API. And they've got examples for curl and they've got examples for JavaScript. So we're going to be writing Python code. And so Python code is not available, but I think we can work with the curl example code, because basically all we need to know is that what is the URL that we need to send the request to. Okay, so we need to know what is the URL, and then we need to know if there's anything that needs to go into the headers. So if you see that -h over there, this is data that needs to be included in the header of the request. And then basically if there's anything that needs to go into the body or whatever it is. So I think if you look at the curl option, you'll be able to figure out exactly what's required over here. And I'm going to test this out using Postman. All right. You can follow along with me, or you can just watch this part, because or you can install Postman for yourself, and you can then also test as I go along and see whether it really works. I like to test my APIs using Postman first, so that by the time I write the code in my Python program, I know how it works on Postman, for example. Right, so Postman is a good tester to work with. So in order to list everything inside of our team table, you have to work off this URL. So I'm going to like try and copy it as it is over there. Everything inside of the the quote marks, and I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste that in there. And as soon as you paste it into Postman, you can see Postman already can sort of go through that URL and see the different sort of like the different parameters that are included inside of the URL by default. Maximum records already set at 3. Okay, I want to change that to 5. Because I know I have at least 5. Actually, I want to change that to 10 because I don't want to limit the records. And then the view is going to give this to you in a grid view. I don't think that matters. I don't think that's important. But there's a couple of things that build up this URL that I want to draw your attention to. Okay. So if you look at the URL in detail, the first part is obviously the main base URL for the API, which is api.airtable.com. And then over here, there's a v0. This is the version of the API. I think over time, when Airtable, perhaps they will improve their API, or they will introduce new versions of it. You might find you'll have a version 2, a version 3, a version 4 as you go, and perhaps the version 0 still works. So, and maybe the different versions have different requirements, So, the version is specified over there. And then over here, there is like a number, and that number has been pre-filled for you. It says app X54, this and that. This is your app ID for your Airtable application, all right? So within the API itself, they've already pre-filled this app ID for you. And every time you will call the API, you will be using the same app ID, all right? So we're going to just leave it like that, and we're not going to change it. And then over there, we get into the arguments that go into the URL, and you'll see the team. All right, there's like a team with a big capital letter T, and then there's a question mark at the end before the parameters start. And that team is the name of the table that you're working with. So over time, you will get used to how the API URL, your Airtable API URLs look like. They will always have the app ID. They will always have, obviously, the version and the URL of the API itself. And then towards the end, you will have the different parameters that go into the API. In this specific case, we are calling the team a table, all right? And then we are calling it for maximum records of 10, and we are calling a grid view, which I don't think it matters at this point. And if we just sort of run this API right now, if we just sort of run this GET request, you will see that we're going to get an authentication error. So authentication required, we didn't provide authentication with this API. This is there to protect your records. If somebody with the same URL, if you were watching this video and you just copied my URL and pasted it and they allowed you to just be able to access the data, it would mean that you would also be able to access my information. So there's something that I need to have that's a secret that I provide, that is a secret private key that sort of protects my my data and confirms with Airtable that I am the original owner and I have the access to be able to view this data. And within your application, you also need what they call an API key, all right? And that API key is the one that is going to be like a private secret key that allows you to access your data, that goes through and manages this authentication. So if we take a closer look at the API request over there, you see under double H. So next to that initial curl that we URL that we copied there, underneath it there's that double H that says authorizations bearer your API key. Over there you need to specify your API key, all right? So you need to go to Airtable and get your API key and specify it like that, all right? So to add a header into your what we call to add a header into your to add a header into your API request, what we're going to do over there is that we're going to go into headers, all right? And you'll see over there, there's nothing there. We're going to create a new header and we're going to call it authorization, okay? And then next to authorization, we're going to paste what we copied over there, and it says bearer API key. You must copy the whole bearer and the whole API key, but instead of this your API key, you need to delete this and then you need to paste your actual API key. Okay, there's two ways to access your API key. The easiest way right now is probably to just at the top there, you see that check button there. Okay, so you can just check that. All right, you can just check that quickly. And then if you check that, your API key will appear over there. Okay, I'm going to do that off camera and then we're going to come back and we're going to continue. Okay, so I've checked that. I've seen my API key. I've copied it. All right, I'm going to come over there and I'm going to paste it over here. And then once I finish pasting it, then we can run this and test and see what it looks like. All right, so let's run this. All right, so this time that we've pasted our API key correctly, when we run this, we can see there is some results over there. All right, there is some records. You know, there's an object that gets returned. There's some records over there, and there's an ID. You know, and you can see that, okay, so this works. I'm happy that it works. I'm going to go back to the actual API documentation, and you can see that example response that's given over there is exactly the example response that I'm receiving over at my a Postman. Okay, so we're going to pass this example response and we're going to write Python code specifically to pass this response and display this information in a table format inside of our Flask application. Okay, so off camera, I wrote quickly that code that we did inside of our that we just ran inside of Airtable. Inside of this Postman, I just rewrote it in Python format. So basically, what you're going to need initially is you're going to need to install the library requests. And then at the top, you're going to import it. And how you install it is very simple. Make sure you are inside of your virtual environment at the left there. And then you just do pip install requests like that. Okay, so and then you can run enter. I've already installed it, so I don't need to do it again. And then once you've done that, then at the top of your file, you can do import requests. And then you need JSON library as well to pass through the results that you're going to get from your request to get to what you really need. So that's basically the only two lines of code that you need to add at the top over there inside of your imports. And then once you've done that, you're going to need your API key. Remember that. You've got two options. You can hard code your API key directly into your application itself, or you can put it inside of a file called config, which is what I've done. So inside of the config file, I've saved my API key in there. I'm not going to show it, But once you save it in there, you can then access it from your front end in this format. But it's up to you. Alternatively, you could just hard code it in here if you're not going to be sharing this code on GitHub or anywhere else where you're worried about people seeing your API key. So once you've done that, at the top of your file, you're going to create a new variable called headers. Okay, so it's going to look like what I have over here. You can just copy what I have here. And this is where we are coding our API key into the header of the request. And because we're going to be coding this every time we run a request, instead of writing it in all the different routes that we're going to be using it in, I'm going to just code it once at the top of the file. And I'm going to say headers is equals to authorization. Remember, you have to put that bearer at the beginning of the string, and then you're going to put in your API key in there. And then I've saved mine inside of the config file called Airtable key, and then I'm going to enter it in there like that. And then after that, the second part of your header is the content type. We're just specifying that our content type is application JSON. Okay, so this little line, you can have it at the beginning of your file, and every time you call the API, you're just going to be using the same headers over and over again. And how we call the API in Python is very, very simple. 2 lines of code basically. All right, the first line is the request itself, and the request is requests. You use that requests library at the top there. All right, and then you can say requests get. You get the URL, and the URL that we're going to get in this specific case is this one. Remember, you have a get, a post, a put. There's many types of requests that you could be using on your request library, but in our specific case, we are using a get request. This is a get request. So that's how we know that we're supposed to do a get request to that URL, and then the headers is going to be equals to the headers. Once you've done that, you can simply just access that what's in that R. So your request results are going to be sort of saved in that variable called R. Okay, and then you can just sort of JSON load that variable called R, so that you sort of like you're unpacking it, you're opening it up to see what's inside, and you want to access the text version. You want to access the text element inside of that R object that's returned, or your request object. All right, and then what we did is that we just sort of printed this results to see what we're gonna get. Okay, so initially, just to test that everything is configured properly inside of your application, I would just want to print this result. Okay, and if you are following along at this stage, make sure that you can print this result and you can see that your result is the correct result, and then at least you know that everything up to this point has been configured properly. If you come to this point and you can't access or print the results, or your results are empty, or it's an empty object, then you know something is wrong, either with your headers, or something is wrong maybe with your Airtable key, or something is wrong some way you didn't do this properly. Okay, so I love when a program to do things step by step, so that I know if I have an error, where did the error first initiate. So I'm going to save this, and after saving this, I'm going to make sure that I have this running in my CRM, and I'm going to just nano app.py, and then I can have a look at everything in there, and I'm printing the results. Okay, and everything is running properly, and I've copied and I've all the code that I've explained to you, I have pasted it in here. All right, so you can then close this, don't save anything in there, and I'm just going to run python app.py, right? No errors, so everything is good. And then we're going to check for this on 888, and remember, we've built this in a different route. We've built this on a route called users. So for us to test this flow, we'll have to access this route called users. All right, so I'm going to go back to my application. All right, where is it? All right, there it is. And I'm going to try and find the root called users like that. All right, and I'm going to just enter and refresh this so that it can run this again. You won't see anything on the front end because I'm not showing anything on the front end, but I have printed this on the back end. So if you go back to where you were running your application from, you should see that print coming out. All right, and if you're following along and you see something of this format, you are good. It means that you have configured everything properly. You've got your API keys properly, correctly done. and you can continue from here. So I'm going to close that, and you don't really need to print this at this point. We want to access it off the front end, okay? So we want to actually like build a table of the front end and display everything that we're getting from the Airtable API of the front end of our Flask application. In order to do that, I'm going to go back to my template, and this is the template that I downloaded. All right, and there's many options, and a lot of templates that you download will come with, similar sort of like arrangement, or a similar demo website which shows you how to access all the different elements that are included in the template. So what we're looking for is something like a table that we can use to display our information in a table. We're going to get to the charts later, but for now, we just want to display all that data. We want to display the people's name, last name, as it's shown on the CRM. I want to display the first name, the last name, the title, the email address, and the phone number in a table format. So, this table looks good. It's an Airtable. It's a data table, which I really like. If you have if your data set grows and you have like 50, 100, 1,000, elements inside of your table, you can, if you have it in a data table format, it allows users to search for things, so the data table has got a lot of functionality in the front end, that is built into it, that really helps people navigate through the data that you have in the table. But the drawback to this is that you have to sort of bring forth all your data at the same time, which sometimes slows down your application and reduces its efficiency, because you have to collect everything from your database at the same time, and put it in a nice long list, and then allow your users to sort of search through it. And this is maybe a good solution if you're working with Flask, because Flask doesn't have a lot of the built-in functionalities with the pagination like you have in your Django, and you would have to sort of code that in yourself. And maybe instead of doing all of that, it's just easier to work off a data table. And by the way, because it wouldn't work anyway trying to build in your paginations in here, because you're getting your data off the Airtable, and you would have to be collecting it 10 at a time, and it's going to be really complicated to try and code that. So perhaps for an in-house application like this one, maybe a better alternative would be to use a data table. And I think that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to this is the data table that I want to do. So I want to see the code that's behind here so that I can build this inside of my own application. All right, the easiest way to do that, and by the way, you can do this with any website if you can access their HTML and CSS, right? So I'm going to right click. You can right click anywhere on the page, right? You can right click anywhere on the page and go to view page source. What that allows you to do is to see and view the actual code of this website. All right, so I've done that, and I'm going to open this page source in a different window, and you'll see this window at the top there. It's a view source file for that, and I'm running this off my own computer, which means I have all the source files. And so when I view the page source, I'll be able to access all the source files. It's probably one of the easiest ways to duplicate or use existing or reuse or copy like code from a different website or from your own code. So I've done the view page source, and then I want to access where this table is because I want to see how they built this table. So I'm going to copy that so I can find it over there. All right, and then if I try to look for it, there it is, and you can see there's a page content container fluid that starts over there, and then there is that heading tables, data tables, and third-party plugin. That's the writing that's over there, and then you can see the data table starts here inside of a card. So this is like a card. You can see it's got like a nice shading at the back. And it's got a heading of the card. So if you look over there, this is that card over there, and it's got the card heading which says data table example, and that data table example is this heading, so it's sitting on the card heading over there. Okay, the text primary inside of the card header, and then you have the card body, and inside of the card body you have the table responsive. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to copy this whole div. Okay, let me see where it starts over there and where it ends. Okay, data table example. Let me see where it ends at the end over there. It's a long one. Okay, so this is container fluid. This is the end of the container fluid. I don't want the whole container, I want just the table. So because I've got the container on the other side already, so I don't want the closing div for the container. I can copy it up to just the div before that one. Okay, so I'm going to highlight all of this and I'm going to copy all the way until the bottom of the table over there. I don't want the whole div. I'm going to copy it up to that point. Okay, so copy that, and then we're going to put it in an HTML so we can see it nicely. So this is our user's HTML. I'm going to create some space over there, and we're going to paste all of that code in there. And usually when you copy and paste, it sort of moves your things around. So I'm going to just move them to the left of the page. All right, and then the first thing I want to do is, there's a lot of rows in this table and I don't need all these rows. Okay, so I'm going to remove all these rows. Okay, all the table rows, well, the majority of them, not all of them, but a lot of the rows. I actually just want to leave like one row, 2 rows maybe. Okay, so these are all your table rows. All right, so this is a row. Okay, and this is a row. This is a TR is a table row. This is a table row. So these are 2 rows of the table, and this is the table body, the body of the table, and this is the head of the table. There's a footer for the table. I don't want this footer. Okay, so I want this table with the table head. All right, and this is like the headings of the table: the name, position, office, age, start, salary. If you look over there, that is your name, position, office, age, start, salary. Okay, so that's the head of the table, and then this is the body. So these are all the different corresponding rows with that heading. Okay, so this is the first name, the position, the office, and so forth and so forth. So I actually only need 1 row because I'm going to be using data that I'm going to replicate different rows. Okay, so this is really, really good. But I need to change these headings to fit the headings that I have inside of my table on the other side. All right, so the table that I'm going to be working with inside of my CRM, it has a first name and a last name and a job title. Okay, so let's change those ones. Let's say first name. Let's say last name. Okay, let's say job title. Okay, so we have first name, last name, job title. We have email and phone number. All right, so we have email and we have phone number. All right, what else do we have? We have a profile image and all of that. That's not important. We'll put the profile image perhaps next to the names. In fact, maybe we'll put the profile image over there, but we'll do that later. Let's start with just the first name, the last name, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so we'll have 5 of these. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and I'm just gonna make them empty. All right, so that we will get that data later on, and I'll show you how to get the data to fit into the table. Okay, good. All right, so the table should now be empty with your first name, the last name, the title, the email, and the phone number. Right, and instead of data table example over here, I'm going to say this is the users. Whatever our organization name is, we're going to call this Skolo users, Skolo CRM user table, users. All right, so these are the users of our table, and that's our name, their names and everything. So now let's have a look again at our information. Let's go through what our data is going to be looking like so that we can get these individual elements that we can fit into our display. All right, so it looks like the data comes inside of an object, and inside of that object is an array. Okay, so I'm assuming inside of this array you'll have the first element and the second element, whatever, depending on how many rows you have inside of your table. Okay, so we need to access the object, which is the results object. this one over here inside of the app.py, this result object. All right, so we need to access results dash records. All right, and this in this result.records, there are different like array. There's an array of objects in here. So let's say we want to access the first object inside of the array. Okay, so inside of the first object inside of the array, we have the ID, which will be the ID of the object, and then after that we'll have the fields. Okay, so the fields will then be the different fields that go into that table. All right, so I'm going to paste fields in there. All right, and then after fields, then you'll have the different things. So you'll have the last name, you'll have the first name. Okay, so let's have the first name like that. Okay, so it will be fields, it will be first name. All right, so this is what needs to go in the table, users table under first name. Okay, so let me find a way to rewrite this nicely in Ginger template format. All right, so this result object is going to be available in the front end. So let me cut this and go to the back end and paste that in there. All right, so the result will be available in the back end because we're being provided with the result, because we are sort of pushing in the context of the HTML. We are adding all the local variables. So because we are adding all the local variable, it means this result variable will also be available in the back end. All right, so I can access this result variable, but I want to access result records, and result records is a list. Okay, so within this list there will be different rows. Okay, so I need to access the first row, the second row, the third row. So I can access all the different rows by saying all the elements that are available in the list that is called result records. Okay, does that make sense? It's a bit confusing, but I'm going to write the code and then you will see what I'm talking about later on. In this code, I want to access for, I'm going to call this user. You can call it anything you want. I'm going to access the list called result. Okay, result.record. Yeah, I'm going to access the list called result.records. Okay, so this is an array, and for user in result.records, it means I'm accessing all the different elements or all the different rows inside of result.records. Okay, and I'm gonna say in here end for. All right, so this will now create a new row every time it sees result.records, and then inside of that row I can then access inside of that is result.records for each and every single element which I've decided to call the user. Okay, I can then access now user.fields.first name, user.fields.whatever, all the other things that are available. Okay, so I can now delete that and now say I am now inside of the individual result.records. Okay, and there's gonna be as many as there are available rows inside of that table. So in this, the first one that I want to access in here is that I want to access the fields dot first name. Okay, so I'm going to say in this specific case I want to access the user. Okay, user.fields dot, you must copy it exactly as it is over there, dot first name. Okay, user.fields.first name. Okay, then I'm gonna delete that, and I'm going to test if this is working properly first. Okay, let's test this quickly. Actually, I can quickly see what the other elements are. There is first name. Okay, there is last name. All right, so let's get the first name, the last name. The next one is job title. Right, first name, last name, job title, the email address. Where's the email address? It's exactly like that, email with a big E. Right, so I'm going to paste that in there, and the last one is your phone number. And you'll recall why I was very specific about not wanting to have spaces in between my table names. This is the reason why. When you're calling the API, it just makes it easier for you when you didn't have spaces in there. Otherwise, you're gonna have to do some more coding gymnastics to access those elements inside when you've got spaces in between. All right. So I'm going to then just paste that in there. Okay, so what we're doing here, we are saying that we are creating a table, and inside of that table, we are wanting to access the first name, last name, job, email address, and phone number, and we're trying to pass the results dot records, okay? Because in the front end here, we are getting the results, and the result object looks something like this. Inside of the result object, you have an object called records, and then inside of that records is an array of rows that go into your records, okay? So we are now iterating through those rows, so all the results of records, then we can then find the first name, the last name, the job title, the email, and the phone number. Okay, let's hope this is good and this is going to work. I'm going to save this, and I've only basically made a change in my users.html file, so I'm going to just copy that. I've gone back to copying and pasting. All right, I'm going to cd into the template. Let's see, do we have RM users? There's a better way of doing this, just using Git. But to go through this quickly, I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to app.py. I'm just going to remove that. Let's cd out of here. Let's nano app.py. Inside of there, I just want to remove this print statement for the results. I don't need to print it anymore. I've printed it. I've seen that it works. It's just going to clog my dashboard there. So I'm going to clear this, and then we're going to test this. All right. So we're going to do Python app.py. All right. And then now we are basically trying to display this table inside of the users.html, which is the HTML that is going to be displayed if you go to the users root. All right, so let us go into our application over there and go to the users root and see what happens. Okay, so there's a bit of an error there. I need to say for user in. Okay, I need to say for user in results.records. All right, so let's nano templates users.html. I need to say for user in. All right, and then we can save that, and then let's try and run it again. Awesome. All right, so there we go. It works. It worked. All right, so right now we are displaying all our table information from our CRM database, and we can double check. John Snow, chief engineer, that's his email address. Let's have a look over there. John Snow, that's our chief engineer. That's the phone number 09378. And basically now we are able to pull all our records from our CRM into our Python Flask application. Okay. Now what I want to also show over there is I wanted to show the profile image. Yes. yeah, let's show the profile image. Let's create a new column with the profile image over there. All right, and you can see over here that the profile image is also available inside of them. They do return the profile image URL. Okay, so you can basically just display this URL directly inside of your application. You don't have to like download and save this image inside of your server somewhere else. Okay, so the best way to do that, let's see. T heading, and let's like display what does that person look like. Okay, and TD over there, and for the TD we're going to try and say this is an image. All right, and then I'm just gonna put the out of that image is that person's name. All right, the person's first name and the person's last name. Right, as the out of that image. All right, and the SRC of the image. Now this is where it's going to get interesting. All right, we need to be able basically to pass into this URL and get this. Okay, so basically this is everything. It's everything would be the same except we need to now access the profile image part. All right, so let me paste that in there in the meantime so that I can then copy this. All right, but you'll see that inside of the profile image there is another array. All right, so basically we must access the first object in that array in there. All right, so basically once we've accessed the profile image in there, we need to access the first element of the array. Okay, and then after we've done that, then we need to access the URL. Okay, .url. Okay, let's try that. All right, and most probably we also want to height, maybe make it like 50. All right, let's test that. All right, so let's see. We are accessing the image URL, and then let's save that, and then let's try and run this and Python app.py, and we're going to refresh this page, and we've got our profile images there as well. Okay, perfect. So now we can see the individual users that we've got in our CRM, what they look like, and it's up to you. You can make this maybe even smaller, but I think this is perfect. Now inside of our CRUD application, we now have the ability to read information of our Airtable base. Now we need the ability to create. All right, so how would you now add data into the Airtable database and create a new element that's gonna be added into this into your table? So I'm gonna create now an ability for you to add a new record into your database, and then later on we'll look at deleting and updating records. Okay, now we're going to go into creating records from our Flask application into our Airtable database. Obviously, for you to get your CRM to work, you're going to need clients to be able to create records from your application where you are doing the majority of your logic writing or your governance, which is going to be our Flask application in our specific case. So if we go into the create record API documentation, you will see it's actually very simple how to create a record inside of Airtable. This is the code that you need. All right, so you need to create a post request. So now there's post in front of your curl, which means it needs to be a post request, and they've given you the URL that you need to send the post request to, and within that URL then you need to send the following headers. You need to specify the content type as a header, and then you need to also specify your authorization bearer API key like we did before. So if you go back to our front end application, you will see that our header up is pretty much already done. So that's why we did that header once. We've written it once. We're going to be using the same header every time. It has the bearer authorization, and then it has a content type, which is application JSON. And then you need to then specify the data. Okay, so the data is going to be like a JSON object, which we're going to send into the data element of our request. And inside of that data, you need to have it in this format. Okay, it needs to fit exactly the way it's written inside of this API documentation. You must have an object, and inside of that object, you're going to have records. And then inside of that records, you're going to have it as an array. Even if you're only supplying one record, you must still have it as an array, and then you'll have only one record in that array. And then you must specify the fields, and then put in the different fields in there. So there's a certain way that your data object must look like when you're sending it to the Airtable API. And the documentation gives you a very nice example. So what we need to do now is basically take all of this and rewrite it in Python format. All right, so I've done it for you, and you can just follow what I've done. Once you do it once, you'll be able to copy and paste it everywhere, right? So basically what you need is that, remember, you need to have an object. All right, so in this object, you need to then have call it records. You need to have within that object, you need to create an element called records, and inside that element called records, you're going to have an array. And in this array, if you had more than one record, you would put all the different rows in there. But even if you have just one record, you still have to create that array, and then within that array, you'll have only one record in that array. And then within that one record, you're going to have to create your fields. So within that one record, you're going to have to create an object called fields. And then inside that fields, you're going to have to specify all the different elements that are going into the table columns. So this is your team ID, your first, last name, all the different things are going to fit inside of your columns over here, your team ID and so forth. But inside of the API documentation, it's also specified for you what must go in there. And you must rather copy and paste this so that you don't get the spelling wrong. Okay, so it's very important that you type it exactly the way it's written in the API. If it's a capital letter F, you must use that. If it's a small letter T, this is how you called it in your table. You must copy and paste it exactly as it is written in the API documentation. Now, I've done that already. Team ID, first name, last name, I've got it for my table. And then you can specify the different variables that go into those, so you're going to say what is your ID, your first name, your last name, your title, and so forth and so forth. And in our specific case, we're going to have a user enter a form, and within that form they will be entering all that different information, and we're going to pick that information out of the form, and then we're going to put it into this API object, and then we're going to send it into this URL and send it to Airtable. So there's a couple of steps that we're going to follow here. And if you're following along and you're coding like we are coding, the first step is to make sure that you update your imports at the top over there. So just have a look at what I have there. I've added a couple new imports there. I've added redirect and URL4. This is just because after I've done my request method post, I'm going to be redirecting to the same URL, okay, instead of directing anywhere else. So you're going to need to import those at the top, the redirect and the URL4. So that's what I've done at the top there. And then I also imported request at the top. And just to note, this request is different from requests. This requests is the requests library that we use to perform the requests call. So this is the one that we use to make all the different API calls. We are using the requests library, and it's the one which we import at the bottom there. But this request at the top is a request object from the Flask library. This request object is that request there, the one that says request.method. Okay, you can have request method post, request method get, and then there are different elements of that request object. But this request object, it comes from the Flask library, and then this requests at the bottom here is the requests that is the request library for performing the API calls. So these are two different ones. The one has an S at the end and the one does not. So because now we want to access the post part of the request, in case somebody is posting something to this URL, or someone is getting something, so we want to be able to differentiate between a get and a post for our specific URL that we are creating in our application. That's why we have this request.method is equal to post. So when somebody is posting a form in this URL, they will be doing the post method. And if you're going to use this, at the top there, you're going to have to add methods is post and get. You'll see initially in our root, we just had app root, and it was just like that. But now we're going to have two different types of requests in here. We're going to have both the post and the get request. So we have to specify at the top that both the methods are valid. If you don't specify this at the top, you'll get an error that the method is not allowed. Okay, so you have to allow it at the top there so that you can be able to use it. So once you've done that, this then will run a default, whether it's a post or a get request, but then the code that is underneath here will only run for a post request. This means that if somebody now submits a form on this method, which will be a post request, we can then access the information inside of that form and do something with it inside of this code that's written inside request.method is equals to post. So that's the first part of code that you need to get inside of your app.py file. The second modification we have to do is obviously inside of our users HTML file, we need to then specify and actually build this form that we're going to be using to collect the data from the client end. So we're going to allow the client to enter this information as a form, and they will be entering the ID, the name, the last name, and so forth. And as they enter that information, we'll be collecting it in the request.form object. Now, inside of the users object, over here, I decided to enter my form, all right? And if you look at my form, where's my form? There it is, all right? So I've started a form object, a form HTML element, and the action for that form is going to be the user's URL endpoint, and then the method for that form is going to be a post method. So you're going to post into this URL endpoint all of the information that you're going to collect from this form. And what we've done over here, this is very simple. Inside of the form, we just basically have rows and columns. So there's a row and a column 12, and inside of that row and column, we have the form group, and then inside of the form group, we just have an input element. And inside of that input element, it's like a type text and a class form control, and then we give it a name. Okay, this name is very important because whatever the name that you give it over here is the same name that you will use to collect the information in the back end. So this team ID is the name that I've given that first object that I'm going to say enter team ID there. Okay, so at the back end, when I collect it from the form, I will collect it as a request.form team ID. And the same applies for the first name, last name, job title, email, phone number, and all the other elements of the form. So I have the team ID, the first name, the last name, the job title, the email, and the phone number. So these correspond with all the elements of my table over here, which is your first name, last name, job title, phone number. They also correspond with all the elements inside of my API there, which is team ID, first name, last name. So I've just rebuilt all of these inside of the form. It's your job title, email, phone number, first name, profile image, and everything. The only difference and the only trick with the API, with the Airtable API there, is when you're entering the profile image. Okay, so normally how we upload images inside of a Flask application is differently. They will be uploaded as a file object in the back end, but in this specific case we don't need to do that because we can't actually send a file object to using the API. What we need to do here is that we need to upload the file in an external location. So I'm going to use this service here called imgbb, all right? And then I'm going to upload an image inside of this service. And once I've uploaded the image there, I'm just going to then take note of the image SRC location, because this is the location that I'm going to have to give Airtable. So when I enter the image URL, this is the URL that this is the what I'll be sending to Airtable, and then Airtable will download this image from this location. So how you attach documents and all of that is different with the Airtable API. For images, I suppose it's simple, because you can just get an online image host, and they can host your image for you, and then you can just send the URL to that host to Airtable, and then they'll be able to access that image and include it inside of your table. But if you wanted to send documents and other things like that, it might be better for you to create your own HTTP server where you're gonna save those documents, and then you can then send to Airtable the outside URL location to where your document is, because they have to be able to access it from an HTTP URL, so that they can download that document or that file. So with an image, we'll just use this. I think later on, when we do more complicated document uploads and things like that, perhaps we will even host our own folder on HTTP, and then I'll show you how to do that, and then that's how we'll be able to perhaps send documents to the Airtable API. So for now, I think that's sufficient. So let me have a look at my form again. Okay, so my form is going to be like a modal. All right, I'm going to be using a modal, and a modal is one of those nice pop-up things, so that when I'm sitting at my my table, instead of creating a whole new page that is just going to be created to be a form page, I'd rather create a modal on this page, which means that the HTML is sort of hidden. You don't see it until you click on the modal, and then when you click on the modal, the form comes up, and then you can complete it quickly and submit it. So you're able to do a lot of things in one page. All right, that's a really neat way of doing forms, especially in this type of applications, so that you don't do too many HTML pages. Now, to get started with modals, you can go into Bootstrap and read more on Bootstrap modals. Okay, this link I can put in the description below, but I don't really need to, because you can just Google this Bootstrap modals, and you can see how Bootstrap modals work. So basically, it's like you get a button like that, and you would be able to click on it, and then you get a pop-up that pops up in front of the user. Everything else gets dimmed, so the user can focus only on the pop-up at the time, and then you can have a form inside of that modal, for example, and then you can complete the form. Once you're done with the form, you can close the modal, and you can process the form that way. And that's a nice, neat way of like having a form on the same page where you have other things, without having the form clutter everything else on the page. So that's the arrangement that we're going to use, and I think we've decided to go with this large modal. So I basically just copied this code from here and pasted it there, where I have my button there, which is the large modal button, and then there is the modal itself. It starts there, it ends there, and inside of the modal, I've just entered all the row. The form is the only thing inside of the modal, and then I've entered the row elements and the inputs. So all of these are sitting inside of the modal, and then when you click it, you should be able to open it up and then complete your form. And then when you submit, the button at the bottom there that says add member is a submit button. It will automatically close the modal as well at the same time, because it will process the submit of the form into the server end, and then the form will come over here at the back, and then it will be on the post request, and we'll be able to access the elements in the form by saying request.form, and then call out the different elements. These names match the names that are in here: email, phone number, name. These names are the same names in there, and then we'll complete this in this object. It must be in this format exactly, and then once we've done that, we will post to this URL. This URL is the same URL that we got over there, so this is the post URL for adding and creating a new record. All right, so we'll post in that URL, and the JSON, we must call this payload, we must call it JSON, and then the headers is the headers, and then after that we'll return, and we'll see if that new record has been added. So it's quite a bit of code, but you can freeze this screen at any point, copy and paste the code. So I've done all of that, and I've pasted the code already inside of my virtual server, and I'm going to just test it right now in front of you So you can see how you can create a new record directly from your Flask application and add all of that into your Airtable base. So let's have a look at our Airtable base. We have 6 rows of data inside of our team table. Okay, we're going to add the 7th one right now. Okay, so to do that, let me make sure that my server is running. Yes, it's definitely running. And then let me go there and refresh this page and make sure that everything is good. So that's my button at the top there, that is create a new button, the one that's supposed to be activating our modal. The form is sitting behind the modal. Okay, so I'm going to click that button and then you'll see the form comes up. You can see the styling is it's not great. It means this template didn't have modal styling already pre-built. It makes sense because this is a starter template, so it's very likely that they've just given you half the elements you need. They know very well that you're going to need a modal at some point, and then you're going to come back and buy the pro version. And I hate templates which are like that, because actually modals are a basic thing inside of Bootstrap, and they should have just included the basic Bootstrap elements anyway, because I can just get this off Bootstrap without having a fancy admin template. So as a result, I'm going to give this admin template a thumbs down, which means the next time we go through this template, I'm going to actually replace this template and use another one, because you can get a whole lot of, you can even get off Bootstrap itself. They've got even admin templates, but they're not as stylish or as good looking as the ones which are nicely styled. But I think it will be able to do what we want it to do. So maybe next week what I'm going to do is that I'm going to just get rid of this template and use another one, because a modal is actually a very basic element of Bootstrap, and I'm irritated that this template doesn't even have styling for a modal in the template, which means they want you to go buy the premium one, and that's just stupid. So let's enter a new, but at least you can see the functionality of it, and we'll fix our template next week. All right, so let's enter a team ID. For that, I'm gonna copy a UID from here. Right, for a team ID. So I'm going to enter that and paste that. Let's find somebody from Westeros, a nice name that we can use. We're going to use Stanis. All right, and what Stanis is a title, he's a project manager. All right, and his email address is this: Stanis at Westeros. We're going to enter a phone number for Stanis. And let's enter the profile image URL. Remember, when you're sending an image over to Airtable, you need to just supply them with a HTTP client-facing URL so that Airtable can access that image and include it in your data table. So what we're going to do for that is that we're going to use this URL here. Okay, we're going to use this URL there. Why does it just do that? No, man, I just want to copy this part. Just this. That's so stupid. Can I paste this somewhere else and I just want to copy this element, this part of the whole thing. Okay. So I just want to copy that, the image URL, and then let's paste that image URL, and then let's add a member and see what happens. It takes a bit of time, and that's my irritation with Airtable. Working with Airtable as an app backend is that it is extremely slow, because it has to go access the API. So if you were doing like a production grade application, I would highly recommend against using Airtable as a backend. But if you're doing something like a CRM, and let's say your clients really inside your organization, you really want to be able to visualize the data in Airtable, I suppose you can do that. But just keep in mind that a lot of the requests take a bit of time to process, and once you start getting more complicated, server, logic that does a couple of requests per route, you're going to have your thing maybe taking 5 to 10 seconds to load. And that is really a long time. And I've seen applications that take forever to load because of the Airtable API. But other than that, something simple like this where we're just adding information, you'll see we've just added this Stanis Marathon. He wasn't there before. This is the record that we added. We now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 records in here. And if we look at our Airtable base as well, the last one that we just added now, this Stanis has been added. Now we have 7 records in here and we have 7 records in there. And that's how simple it is to add a new user into our Airtable. So what we're going to do next week is I'm definitely going to change this this template. We'll use a different one, but we'll continue with our CRM. We've done the create, we've done being able to view records inside of our Airtable. What we're going to do now is add some interesting functionality to delete, to update records, but also to now start going through the records to draw graphs and to try and what we call it, pull out analytics, because that's really why we do CRMs, is that we create a nice base which has all our records in one place. But over time, we want to start to visualize that information. We want to start making sense of how many of our leads are being successful, how many of this and that. And I will show you a nice method of how to start visualizing your data of your data of your your database, and and making your your CRM more useful for your organization. And I'll see you guys and next week. Hopefully I will be feeling better next week to continue with the rest of our tutorial.